I'm so glad you guys are enjoying the interview I did yesterday with Eric. But today, you are going to see an interview that I did on the UK Bitcoin Master channel. Why I'm reposting this is because there's a couple very, very important pieces of information coming here. Firstly, I'm proud to be British, so I want to support British Bitcoiners. So please subscribe to the UK Bitcoin Master channel, and I'm going to put the link in the description. Secondly, I break down exactly how much capital the ex-managing director of BlackRock says is going to flood into Bitcoin as soon as the ETF is approved. So it's very essential that you do two things. Watch this interview, take action, and subscribe to this channel, because the faster you subscribe, the faster the YouTube algorithm gets told that people are interested in Bitcoin content. So without further ado, let's get into this interview. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know your feedback in the comments. And again, there's only 3 rules to Bitcoin. Step number 1, you buy Bitcoin. Step number 2, you shut the fuck up. And step number 3, you get fabulously wealthy after you watch this interview.
Where I can to try and help other people that are regular dudes like me to get bullish. Okay, in comes British HODL. Let's hope it works. Hey mate, I'll tell you, it's great to have you in the house. It really is. I've been wanting to reach out to you for ages, but the trouble is, and I'm just putting it out there, I tend to wear my heart on my sleeve. You really go at it, you know. But do you know what? I've got to say this, British HODL. You speak how I feel, but can I say I'm too frightened to speak? The problem I've got is this. If I say something like you do and people come back at me, I don't have the skill set from a financial background to get into heavy debate, if that might make some kind of sense. So from my point of view, welcome to the channel. I suppose it might be a good idea to just maybe tell my audience a little bit about you and your background and maybe how you discovered Bitcoin, because this is your show, not mine. I want them to hear from you. They hear from me all the time. So great to have you in the house. Tell our audience a little bit about yourself, sir. They don't know you.
Firstly, thanks for having me on. And secondly, I completely understand the hesitation and all that stuff. And that's what's beautiful about Bitcoin, is because anyone can come from any different background and add to Bitcoin. It is the most unique thing I've ever experienced in my lifetime so far. And the fact that anyone from any background can come along and add value to Bitcoin and add a message to Bitcoin, that's beautiful. So my background, I started off negotiating property deals at the age of 16 in London.
Cool. Cool.
So yeah, my dad's always been involved in property, and one day he was negotiating a deal, and I was standing around, and he got off the phone, and I said, "That looks easy," and and instead of telling me to take a hike, he basically said, "Well, show me."
Okay.
And then, I had that sinking feeling, which most people get when they're in their 30s. But my first sinking feeling at 15 and a half, when my mouth had just written a check that my body had to cash now. So I had to figure it out. I had to learn about what a mortgage broker was, what a property developer was, what a solicitor was, how mortgages are structured, why you need a furniture package in a new property, all this other stuff at 16 years old.
Yeah.
I started doing that, and then one thing, the stock market, then gold, and then eventually Bitcoin.
Wow, I hope the audience can hear you. You keep freezing. Oh dear.
Can you hear me? Because everything looks fine on my side.
Yeah. I meant to say to this when we were in the green room, and I'll tell the audience, I'm in the UK and I've got the most crappy upload speed you could ever imagine. And the minute I get a guest on, someone freezes somewhere. So we're going to work through that. But yeah, carry on. Brilliant. So I'd love to know how that all evolved and how ultimately you came to Bitcoin. I guess the question I want to throw in there, and I got it written over there, in that time when you went through your life and everything you did, I want to hear more of it, but I'd like to know if you crap coined as well. That's important to me.
Yeah. So I didn't, from my perspective, and you can tell me whether I'm right or wrong on this, I didn't shitcoin, right? Yeah. And the reason why I believe I didn't is because while I definitely owned some, because I'm an investor, I got to understand how all of this works.
Yep.
I didn't I didn't think that it was the future. I didn't put a significant. It's like 0.5% of my allocation at that point, or something
Mm.
like that. Was it like various things just to understand the tech side of it and understand like whether there was any merit in this? Because as an investor, I've got background in real estate, stocks, gold, everything else. So to me, when I first came into Bitcoin, it's like, okay, maybe there is some merit, and at least maybe there is some speculative opportunities here, which is my background. So I don't think I'm a crap coiner, as you said, but you can tell me if I'm wrong.
No, listen, and to be honest with you, and what I wanted to do with this, I just wanted us to hold a conversation, but you and I are holding a conversation and others are just listening. So for me, that's the best way it works. For me, when I got into Bitcoin, I did the same. I think, and I don't want to give away and mess my upsec up, but I would say that probably 95% upwards was all Bitcoin, but I got myself a handful of Ethereum because I didn't know what I was doing. But all I would say is within about 2 years, I think I got rid of them and everything. I am literally a pure Bitcoiner, whether you call me a maxi or not. I mean, there's a lot of different definitions on what a maxi is. For me, I just believe that Bitcoin is the one shot that humanity has got sound money again, taking it out of the hands of all the corrupt without going into who they all are. We know them: bankers, politicians, governments, etc. And I don't think anything else comes close. And I think I'm a deep thinker, British HODL. I'm a real deep thinker. And I think down the road, always 5 years, 10 years. And, people go, no, Bitcoin hasn't done this yet. How come it hasn't become payments yet? People do not understand how long it takes, and this is where I want your input because I'm not a financial person, how long it takes for companies to look at something like this and then maybe get all their board to agree it and teams of people that got to look at it and all the intricacies of it all. And people think it's going to happen overnight. And I never thought for 1 minute it would happen overnight. For me, it was a minimum 10-year play. That was for me.
Yeah, for me as well. I don't plan on looking at my Bitcoin. I only plan on adding to it until somewhere around 2032, 2034. At that point, I'll reevaluate and we'll look at what's going on, and I'll reevaluate the next 10 years of action. But it takes a while. I mean, look at what MicroStrategy. It took MicroStrategy 8 or 9 months to get fully allocated into Bitcoin, and that's with it going from top to bottom, right? Imagine most of these companies where the CEO is not as visionary as Michael Saylor, and the CEO is just trying to stay employed for the next quarter, and it's really trying to come from the bottom up for most companies. So, if it took 8 or 9 months when it was going from the CEO down, and a visionary CEO at that, it could take 2 years with going from bottom up. So there is a lot here that people think that institutions move at the same pace as me and you, right? It's one of the reasons why I love managing my own money, because I can move at the speed of light.
Yep.
Whereas an institution can't. If BlackRock was managing my money, for example, or Goldman Sachs or someone like that, it would take them a year to make a decision that I can make in a month. So we have to allow for that.
So what I guess where I want to get to is, I am watching you of late and you are beating this drum, and I want you to beat that drum to my look. Here's the problem: we're in an echo chamber. We keep hearing this, we keep saying it. The people we're talking to predominantly are Bitcoiners anyway. What we need to try and do is get outside that echo chamber and get people to understand why they should consider. And I always say, look, a goal without a plan is just a wish. Set yourself a goal. How do I get to 1 Bitcoin? I keep hearing you saying, get to 1 Bitcoin, get to 1 Bitcoin. I don't care what you do, get to 1 Bitcoin. And I've always been of that opinion that no matter who we are, look, I'm working class. 20 years as a lorry driver, truck driver, depending on who's listening. So I got no experience in financial markets. But when I saw this, I knew that if somebody had 1 Bitcoin, they would be in such a unique position in the future. And I've been listening to you beat that drum of late. Beat it on my show, because it's true, isn't it?
Well, here's a question for you then. What did it for you? What was the missing piece? What was the final piece of the puzzle that made you go, I like this. This is it. I need this. What was that final piece of information that did it for you?
Do I really need to tell you? People will probably say I'm a bit unique. I got a phone call. My wife and I got a Skype call, actually. We were living down in the Canary Islands. It was May the 23rd, 2017. And it was a strange call because it was an old business colleague of mine from Stoke-on-Trent. And he said, I want to talk to you. And we sat on Skype. And 2 hours later, I jumped off of Skype. My wife's analytical. So when somebody says something, somebody who's analytical says why. And it's not being obnoxious. It's just they want to know why. They want the answers to it. So I was just soaking it all up. And she was saying, why? And anyway, 2 hours later, I've jumped on YouTube. I'm all over this. All I could find was Andreas Antonopoulos and a guy that's in my chat right now, Adam Meister, Bitcoin Meister. And I thought, this American guy's totally crazy or he's onto something. And he was ranting like the clappers. And so I got sucked into that. I kept watching Andreas Antonopoulos. And I said to my missus at the time, I think Bitcoin was about $2,050, something like that. And I said to her, I've got to get some. This is going up by tomorrow. You know, the silly thing. I didn't understand it. I didn't know what the four-year cycles were. And I said, this thing's going up and we're going to miss out. We're going to miss out. And I think I'd got on local Bitcoins by the end of the day and connected with some guy and had to do the bit, holding up the bit of paper saying that I'm getting it, you know, for my own reasons and stuff. Stood by the swimming pool taking these photographs. It was most bizarre. And I think by that day or the next day, I think I already had 3 coins. So there wasn't a moment, British HODL. It was, for me, it was like light bulb. It really was.
That was my point. My point was to demonstrate that for you and for me, we have all the information, right? But there is a moment where fear or greed takes over, and that's what makes it click. And so my job is, I believe, is twofold. Number one, I definitely want to talk to people like my parents who have spent 35 years adding to the United Kingdom, building their property portfolio, and ended up getting screwed because the value of their property portfolio has not maintained the value of the amount of pounds that were printed. That's definitely number one. It's a new market. Number two is to embolden existing Bitcoiners who hold Bitcoin now, like my parents now versus where they were in 2020, 2021, where it's scary.
Yep.
Right? You see the price move. You see the price move 10% up or 10% down. It's scary because you've never experienced it with any other asset, and it's liquid, right? So, you know, my job is to help my parents before they became Bitcoiners, basically, and then help people like my parents after they became Bitcoiners to embolden their confidence in what Bitcoin is and why they're actually holding Bitcoin.
Yep.
So that's really my goal. My goal is to help people who are, you know, I would say rich, but don't like thinking that they're rich because they're actually rich, right? If you've got, you know, a £2 million property portfolio or £1 million property portfolio, you're rich, but you don't like saying it, especially in the UK because we don't have that culture, unlike the US.
Yep.
And so, you know, the biggest travesty to me is that the people on the lower end of the economic scale, I as I've always said, honestly, I hope they benefit from everything I'm sharing, but the desire for me is not for them. Because at the end of the day, if you haven't got anything, you have nothing to protect anyway. So and in addition to that, before I sound too insensitive, there's a lot of good content out there for everyone in Bitcoin. But for me, I wanted to empower the people who have done the right thing for 40 years, who have followed all the rules, who have paid the taxes, who have invested in the country, who have worked, who have done all that, and has still got screwed. That's what my goal is.
Yep. No, I get that completely. I mean, I know off air you said, you know, just throw anything at me and we'll have a debate about it. So here's me pushing back on something you say, and I just want debate. And that debate is, you know, you talk about, let me get this right, I think it's the $50 a month and $1,000 net worthers.
No, this is, you got to get this right. You got to get this right, Brian. The $10 a month DCA gang and the $1,000 net worthers.
Yep. Yep. Right. So
My biggest fan group. That's my biggest fan group.
okay. Okay. So am I reading that wrong? Because for me, working class, I've got family members that are DCAing 50 quid a month. It's all they can do. They've caught my vision of Bitcoin, and they haven't got much money, but they can see value in putting this into Bitcoin because the value of their pounds going down over time, and I've explained that, and the value of their Bitcoin can go up over time. So I like you said earlier, I think there's a market for everyone, and every one of us will touch different markets. And I guess that was born out of somebody put a message in my in my comments after one of my shows a couple of weeks ago, and I was using your line, and I think it was something like the door is closing for the common man, or the common man's almost going to be priced out. And I think they are going to be priced out of a whole Bitcoin. And, with that vision again, I can see a world quite quickly where we won't be talking about getting one Bitcoin. It'll be an absolute goal to get to 0.1 of a Bitcoin, if that makes sense. So what I'm doing with people around me is saying, look, set yourself a goal. Aim to get to 0.1. And when you get there, go for 0.2. Get a longer goal of 0.5. Yes, but, I was speaking to my nephew the other day, and, I said to him, look, right now, and I guess some of this is your words. I said, look, right now, the average person anywhere around the world would, a lot of people wouldn't, but would take out a car loan and buy a car for 25 grand, right? And yet you say to somebody, 25 grand on a car loan that depreciates, or 25 grand and put it into Bitcoin and get yourself a whole Bitcoin for the future. And I'll tell you what, 99 out of 100 of them are going to go for that car. They really are. So it's really, really tough, but I'm doing my bit with family and people I connect with and saying, look, you want to aim for one Bitcoin, but get what you can as fast as you can because the window's closing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, listen, look, the reason why that is the case is because the car inspires more fear or greed than Bitcoin does for that person in that moment.
Yep.
Which is why I try and speak in a way that I talk to in my own mind. Yep. I don't try and filter my own mind for the audience, because some people are at the point where they're ready, or some people are going to hear that and it's going to spark something off. And 10 days later, when they're sitting around drinking a beer or having a coffee, it's going to come back into their mind, and they're going to go, oh, I get it now. It's suddenly it's going to click. But the point I want to make on the $10 a month DCA gang and the $1,000 net worthers, I'm not insulting anyone who is working hard, adding value to their country, doing the right thing and saving in Bitcoin. That's not who I'm talking about. Yep. What I'm talking about is the people on my Twitter or my YouTube who have comments around how things work in the financial system but don't have a pot to piss in. That's who I'm talking about. That yep. is who I'm talking to. Yep. It's not an insult to the common man by any stretch. If I wanted to insult the common man, I wouldn't be doing my YouTube channel, because my parents are commoners that worked hard and made it, right? My dad is an immigrant into the United Kingdom. I'm a proud Brit. Like this is what the United Kingdom is built on. Yeah. So, those two comments are for a specific group of my fan base, and there's the biggest part of my fan. They love me so much they can't resist.
Which is cool. That's all I wanted to get to, because I wanted to talk to you in person, because I didn't think for 1 minute from listening to you, you're the sort of person that wants to willingly offend anyone. But sometimes we need to tell people what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. And do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And your
Absolutely.
message coming out loud and clear to me is, this window is closing for the regular guy to get one Bitcoin. So talk to my audience around that.
I guess I would rather be hated by someone who got to one Bitcoin than loved by someone who didn't.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Because I understand I'm not going to be here in 8 years. Like, there's no value in anything I have to say in 8 years' time.
Yep.
And I'm completely comfortable with that. Imagine that. I'm spending all of this time, all of this effort, putting this message out there, putting this energy out there, putting myself out there. knowing that it's going to come to an end very soon.
It is.
Right? I haven't, I almost haven't put, no, actually, that's a lie. I was going to lie on your channel and say almost, but I did. I caught myself.
You do what you want, man.
I've put a similar amount of energy into, British HODL and this message of get to 1 Bitcoin that I have in businesses that I've built before.
Yep.
So, and it's like, what other reason is there to do this than to tell people you are going to miss out, especially now. When you started, right? People can say, okay, 2017 to 2023, what happened? Maybe I haven't missed out. Firstly, the price went up 20x, right? So, you've shot yourself in the foot there. But now the one thing that's never ever happened to Bitcoin is about to happen, which is a demand shock. Bitcoin has never ever experienced a demand shock. There's a lot of ex-BlackRock managing directors, et cetera, coming out and saying that there's probably going to be about $150 billion worth of purchasing demand within 3 years of the ETF coming out.
Yep.
Now, if you actually think through that, right, there's 252 trading days in a year. In order to spread that $150 billion over 3 years, which is something like 750 days of trading days, the daily purchasing demand, assuming that all of it is evenly spread out on a daily basis over that 3 years, which it never is.
Yep.
But assuming it is, the daily purchasing demand goes up to around $192 million a day of Bitcoin purchasing.
Yep.
Current price at 27,000, based on Fundstrat's research, is being maintained by $25 million a day worth of purchasing.
Yep.
So what does this mean? It means that on the very first day of the ETF, if this is true, the Bitcoin price, in order to maintain an equilibrium, needs to go up to $192,000, right? You've got $25 million a day of purchasing right now to keep the price where it is, and you're about to get an injection of $192 million a day. And that's the institutions telling you that. That's not some crackhead on YouTube that just got hyper bullish named British HODL telling you that. That's the ex-managing directors of BlackRock.
Yep, you said. Yep.
So when people tell me that none of this is possible, it can't happen, this, that, and the other, the thing that I go back to is people have never, ever experienced an asset that has true finality of scarcity. That's what it is. People buy property thinking that they've done the right thing and it's scarce and the value's going up because there's not enough houses. The difference is the government can issue one order and print 100,000 more homes in the next 5 years or 10 years or 20 years. You can't do that with Bitcoin. With gold, I had this little gold spat back and forth with Peter Spina from goldseek.com on my Twitter. And I used to be a gold guy, right? I used to be out here telling people to buy gold, and not Bitcoin, by the way, right? Because I didn't understand Bitcoin back then. So I was telling people gold over Bitcoin back then. And his argument to me was gold is essential because he said we've reached peak gold because it is now taking longer and longer to find new gold discoveries. Now, I used to love goldseek.com back in the day. Now it's a joke to me, especially when he said that to me, because at the end of the day, what this guy failed to realize is that over the last decade and a half, the investment in gold discoveries has collapsed. So how do you expect gold discoveries to go up when the investment in them has gone down?
Yep.
It doesn't make any sense. So these gold bugs have got these dreams about this illusionary scarce asset, but we don't know whether it's truly scarce or not. We don't know what happens to the price of gold once we hit $10,000 an ounce. Because if we hit $10,000 an ounce, I'm pretty sure I've got some gold at home, some jewelry or whatever that I'm going to be selling, right? Everyone has. So suddenly the supply in the market goes up, discoveries go up, and more gold can be printed out of the earth. So the reflexivity of the stock to flow for gold, the stock to flow, for anyone watching that doesn't understand it, is basically how many years of new flow does it take to replace all of the on-ground supply? That's how we measure the hardness of an asset. Mm-hmm. And currently it's 55 to 62 years, which means you already know when the Gold Institute tells you it's 55 to 62 years, you already know it's reflexive Because if it was fixed, how does it go from 55 to 62, right? And so as the price goes up, what happens to that stock to flow ratio? Nobody knows. What I do know is that with silver, which is what everyone's everyone that fails with gold suddenly starts talking about silver, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
with silver, what people don't realize is the Silver Institute itself tells you that the stock to flow ratio of silver is 15 years, which means it takes 15 years to replace all of the on ground supply with new flow. That can come down to 3 years as the price gets closer to $50 an ounce, which is why the silver price never breaches $50 an ounce. So all of these assets, we've never experienced any asset that is truly scarce, truly final. I don't know whether you're into watches, but in the last period over in 2020, 2021, people started buying a bunch of watches, Rolexes, everything else, right? And the
Yeah.
price shot up. What did Rolex do? They've spent their time perfecting their manufacturing, and they're putting out way more watches now than they were 3 years ago. That can't happen with Bitcoin. You can't just make more watches. You can't just print more Bitcoin. You can't just dig more Bitcoin out the ground. That's not how it works. This is the first time in human experience that we've experienced something that's truly scarce besides your own life.
Yeah, I know.
That's it. It's your own life and Bitcoin. That's the only two scarce things on the earth.
And you can literally know exactly when Bitcoin will stop being produced as well, 2141, I believe. So at any given time, you can look at the blockchain and tell exactly how many Bitcoin there are out there, etc. Which again, you can't do with gold, can you?
Right. And I actually, after I sold my entire gold position and pivoted into Bitcoin, a few of my friends who are actually prominent gold and silver guys started ridiculing me about it. And I remember that one of the text messages I sent to him, and it was, if you can tell me exactly how many gold grams were dug up out of the ground yesterday, I will put 50% of my net worth back into gold. And obviously, I'm still waiting for an answer.
So my question to you then is, why don't gold bugs get this? It's logical. Peter Schiff is one. I mean, for me, I think he's got to have some, but he's beating on it all the time. And I don't understand what he's missing. Someone like him, and you've done the same, you'll understand scarcity, you'll understand stock to flow and all those things. Surely it's logical. Is it out of it's only 14 years old and it might go away and the governments might shut it down and all that stuff? What makes gold bugs push back so much?
So, in my experience, obviously being a gold bug and promoting gold and et cetera, and knowing these guys, speaking with these guys on stages and everything else, it's either stupidity or maliciousness.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
the second one is more concerning than the first one. So here's what I will say. The only arguments that a gold bug should be making for why they're not into Bitcoin is that Bitcoin is too young.
Yeah.
That's it. Everything else that a gold bug says, Bitcoin fulfills better than gold. So the question then is, are you too stupid because you are too emotionally involved with the asset? Like, I'll give you an example. This happens with every asset. My parents are emotionally in love with their property portfolio.
Yeah.
Why? Because they've put so much work into it. It's the one thing that's helped them. It's the one thing that's actually worked over time. So they're emotionally in love. Guess what? When I'm my parents' age, I'll be emotionally in love with my Bitcoin. I'm sure at some point when I have children, they'll be telling me, listen, look, Bitcoin's cool, but it's played out. You need to get into the next, whatever the next thing is, in 50 years or whatever it is. And so I'll still be in love with my Bitcoin at that point because of the amount of work that I've put into it, right? So is it stupidity? That's the first question. Second question is it maliciousness? And that's the one I worry about, because all of these gold guys, besides, and to his credit, Mike Maloney, who has promoted Bitcoin, who has said Bitcoin is a scarce asset, who has accepted that and promoted it, which I respect fully. These other guys, you make money selling gold products, you make money selling gold investments, you make money selling gold bars, you make money, you make money selling gold. So are you incentivized to poop on Bitcoin because of the amount of money you're making? And what does that mean for the audience that you're speaking to?
Yeah.
That's the question.
Well, you're doing them a disservice in my book. You're doing them a grave disservice.
But is it malicious?
Mm.
Right? Doing someone a disservice, you could do someone a disservice by being stupid. But does Peter Schiff actually know that Bitcoin is better than gold, actually hold Bitcoin himself, and still poop on it? That's malicious.
Mm.
So
he's
that's
incentivized. He's incentivized. He's got a gold fund. You know, I don't know what his worth is or what his fund is worth, but you know, that's his business. So it's almost like saying, I'm going to go and dump my own business down the tubes, just to tell people about how good Bitcoin is. But you know, Larry Lepard, you know, I've met him in person. He's a great guy, and you know, he's got it. You know, gold and Bitcoin are both on the same fight. You know, trying to get us back to sound money, but Bitcoin is without a doubt the fastest horse in the race. You know, so I don't know. It's a difficult one, isn't it? You know, you are right. I think, you know, if Peter Schiff is doing what you've just said, then that's really not good, is it? Because he is influencing people's lives, people's financial futures with what he says.
Yeah. And the one thing that gold, you know, they always talk about saving in gold, but gold in essence is for the elites, because if I buy an ounce of gold, when I buy gold, right, when I used to buy gold, I was buying ounces of gold.
That's what I wanted you to talk about when people buy grams. I heard it on your show.
Right. And when I was buying ounces of gold, I'm paying a 2 or 3% premium on the price of gold. So if gold is $2,000 an ounce, I'm buying that ounce for $2,040. Right? Makes sense. Someone's going to make some money along the way. Absolutely fine. Which means that for me, gold has to go up from 2000 to 2040 before I start making a profit. Fair enough. Now, what they'll do, and they'll try and bolster the cash flow revenues of their business, is convince people to save in gold, right? And when they convince people to save in gold, what they're telling them to do is on a monthly basis, out of your paycheck, buy a gram of gold, put it to the side, and it will serve you in the future, right? Everyone's heard this, right? The problem with that is that when you buy a gram of gold, I can go and look on AppMex right now, and it's about $100 for a gram of gold. But if you go look at goldprice.org, a gram of gold is like $60. So what that means is you're paying a $40 premium. It's like handing over a $100 bill or a 250-pound notes and receiving back 60 pounds or $60 of material, which means that gold price now has to go up by 70% before I break even. Think about it. So, but that's the best model for bolstering cash flows for these gold businesses.
So what you're saying is then it really just does not benefit anyone to be buying grams. You do better to save it up and buy an ounce.
Well, that's another scam of every asset besides Bitcoin, right? Because it's let's say it takes you 10 months in order to save up. Well, it's actually more than that. Let's say it's 20 months, right? It takes you to save up in order to buy that ounce, right? Your money, your cash flow, your currency is being devalued over that 21 period while you're saving up. So by the time you get there, the value of the currency is now depreciated. Right? This is the same issue people have with houses, right? They save up their entire life to buy a house. By the time they get to buying a house, the house is worth 50% more than it was, or valued at 50% more than it was, and now they got to keep working. They got to get into the rat race. This is the basic idea of the rat race. So that's the other scam with every other asset besides Bitcoin, because with Bitcoin, me as a multimillionaire is buying the same asset as a multi-billionaire, as the same person who's a working class person, as the same person who is on the street. We're all buying the exact same asset with the exact same cost. Maybe there's a 1 or 2% difference between my purchasing price and Michael Saylor's purchasing price based on the volume. Sure. Right? But that's it. It's the first time in human history where we're all buying the exact same asset for the same cost basis.
Okay, let me pivot. I keep hearing, and I've forgotten the terminology. I'm not going to say trilemma, but you've got three things converging. You've got the halving coming up. You've got the spot ETFs. And then there's one other, and it's just gone right out of my head. I wanted to ask you, what do you see happening? You're really bullish on this. This is one of the reasons you keep saying the window is closing. ETF this year, next year. I mean, look, in all honesty, I'm happy with January next year. I've held for 6.5 years, so a little bit longer I'm going to be okay with. But, nobody's got a crystal ball. But your thoughts on all of this? It wasn't the demand shock. What was the third thing? Somebody put it in the chat. I can't remember what it was. While I think of it, over 100 viewers and 56 likes. Come on, people. Your Bitcoin can be helped number go up by more people finding mine and Hodl's channels and getting hold of this information. So, like it, share it. What are your thoughts around these things that are all starting to converge?
Yeah, we're entering a perfect storm scenario here for an asset with finality of supply.
Yep.
The halving coming up is programmed. We know exactly what's going to happen. We know how it's going to work. Institutions know how it's going to work. Everyone knows that supply is going to get cut by half in April next year, around April next year. The ETF, I think that it will happen by mid-Jan of 2024, but I personally, as I put out on many videos and tweets, I personally lean to 2023. It makes more sense if I'm an institution and I'm now working with the SEC to have the ETFs approved at least a quarter before the halving. Why? Because if I'm selling anything, let's say I want to sell these cans of water, right? I need to create these cans of water. I then need to explain to my sales team what they are. I need to explain why we've gone from bottles to cans. And I need to explain to them who the target market is. Then they need to get trained on how to sell it, why the benefits of the can is better than the benefits of a plastic bottle. And then they need to actually get on the phone and sell the thing, right?
Yep.
And one of the biggest sales pitches for Bitcoin is the halving. The fact that there is a supply shock coming. If I'm a an asset management salesperson on the phone and I'm talking to a client, the biggest thing I can say is the supply shock's coming. It's about to go down by half, and it's coming in a few months. And when you're dealing with institutional clients, it takes them a few months to move cash, to move money from one asset to the other, to liquidate positions, et cetera, et cetera. So it makes sense to me that we get it this side of the year, because they then have a few months to prepare for the halving and to sell the asset into the halving.
Yep.
And they want to make money. They want to make fees, right? I just follow the money. Everyone goes, how do you think about the things that you think? I just follow the money. It's just very, very simple. I just follow the incentives. So to me, if there is any amount of conversation between BlackRock, ARK Invest, Fidelity, all these other people, and the SEC, what they're saying is we need a few months to actually sell this thing to our clients. So I lean for 2023. We'll see whether it happens. And then the SEC not appealing the Grayscale lawsuit last week was very, very important. So, it emboldened my view that we're going to get it. It's going to be 2023 or by the mid-Jan. But if it comes mid-Jan, I'll still take the credit.
It's nearly here. That's all I've got to say. I've been hearing, I think it was Van Eck, I believe, when I got in 2017, I didn't understand what an ETF was, but they were saying, Van Eck have put in for an ETF and it's been pushed back and it's been pushed back and it's going to be forever pushed back. Well, if it comes in January 2024, we're 3 months away. I don't give a chuff. I'm just holding my Bitcoin, stacking more when I can, and I'm all right with all of that. Question. Do you think the price of Bitcoin is being manipulated? Being?
I have this debate with so many $1,000 net worths I have this debate with. It's like, look, what do you mean by manipulation? If you mean manipulation is someone's selling Bitcoin into the market, that's market forces. That's going to happen. So I have to ask people, what do you mean by manipulation? Because if you're using the natural forces of supply and demand to sell assets, like for example, Sam Bankman-Fried, right? Turns out in the FTX case this week, they were illegally selling customer Bitcoin in order to keep the price down. So the part where he's illegally selling customer Bitcoin is the fraud, not the selling Bitcoin, keeping the price down, right? That's just a market function.
Yep.
So, it really depends. Like I've done a video. I heard Willy Woo talking about how nation states could suppress the price of Bitcoin by getting together and selling $40 million worth
and
of
that
40
shocked
million
me.
worth of.
That shocked me, Willy Woo saying that, if I'm honest.
Did you watch my video rebuttal to it?
I don't think I did, but I remember him saying that, and I thought, this guy's such a clever guy. Where's that coming from?
Yeah, so what he failed to mention in that little segment on what Bitcoin did. By the way, what Bitcoin did, what a job Peter's doing, right? Come on, I mean that's absolutely amazing. Another Brit, like that's absolutely amazing what he's doing. But when Willy Woo said that, I laughed because firstly everyone started tagging me in that and wondering, oh my God, Willy Woo said this. So I was like, okay, cool. Let me take a stab at this. So as I'm watching it, I'm realizing that he's completely ignoring the fact that you would need complete political alignment in the USA. Because firstly, when he says a nation state could do this, only the US capital markets are big enough to pull off what he's saying. So therefore, it's only the US, right? No other capital markets is going to do what he's saying. So it's only the US. You would need complete political alignment, first off. He ignored the fact that you would need complete and utter violation of every securities laws that's out there. You would need complete and utter violation of every commodities trading law that's out there. You would need complete and utter violation of every market stabilization law that has been developed in the United States. So my response to him in my video summary was, sure, it could happen, but what's the damn probability of that? It's like 0.1%. Because the US markets are the best in the world for a reason. They've got hedges against all these things. More importantly, if that was to even happen on a scarce asset like Bitcoin, if you started seeing positions in the market like that, you would start taking the other side because eventually they'd have to cover their short position, especially on an asset that's that scarce. So, is the price being manipulated?
I love the grin.
Is it just market forces? All I'll say is this: everyone goes on about the best doom and gloom boomer argument on gold is that the price is being manipulated. Well, the biggest lawsuit that has ever been done on gold price manipulation was JP Morgan, and they got screwed for spoofing the market. Spoofing the market is, if the price is $2,000, I go and put in a bunch of sell orders or buy orders at 1,900, and the price starts to come down, and before it executes, I pull my order. That's it. That's it, right? So, yeah, does it sound crazy because it's millions and millions of dollars? Sure, but most manipulation cases now in U.S. markets are very, very small as a percentage of market cap. There's obviously going to be bad actors in the market, but they get sniffed out very quickly.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Let me just check the chat. Somebody, Darren, he put my name in. I like to read them out. He said, I originally came across Bitcoin in December 12. Nobody I knew had any knowledge of it, and the online resource as to informing exactly what it was in 2012 was very... Yeah, no, actually, Darren, that's exactly what I was saying. There was hardly anything out there. So... British HODL, let me ask you this. Crikey, that's nearly an hour gone already. Flipping hell, where's it go? It's interesting because you could literally sit down with another Bitcoiner and you could talk into the night, couldn't you? Because you're both in alignment with your beliefs, where it's going, what's happening with the world. And my question is, you said something you will stack until, I think you said 2032 or 2033. I mean, crikey, that's 3 halvings by then, isn't it? Holy moly. So where do you think this whole thing's going to be in a decade? Because I'll tell you why I'm asking it before you answer. Because you look at 2017, my first Bitcoins were $2,000 a coin. Of course, we hit 20K. We then had the 85, 90% correction. Then we had the bear market. And by the way, for those that have never heard me before, I've had people say to me, you're so bullish when it's a bull market, but I bet you're not like that in a bear market. People, go into my archives, find any video you can find in 2018 or 2019 where I am bearish on Bitcoin, the asset, long term, and bring it to my attention, and I'll humbly say, I'm sorry. You won't find one, people. I've been doing this for 5.5 years, and I'm as bullish as hell. That doesn't mean I'm bearish on the price when it goes down sometimes. You cannot have an asset just go up and to the right. It must correct. So that said, where's this thing going to be by the early 30s then?
I think we're looking at, depending on how much capital flow starts coming into it, and depending on which players start coming into it. I mean, we've got the ETF world now that's basically on the precipice of it. We've potentially got the foreign exchange markets, right? Because of what Strike is building, what the ex-direct David Marcus, who's the ex-PayPal managing
I watched him on Peter McCormack. That was good.
Yeah, like, so that's a $7 trillion a day market, right? That's $7 trillion every single day that are used for foreign exchange transactions around the world.
Yeah.
So if 10% of that market says we can do foreign exchange transactions on Bitcoin a lot easier than we can on other rails, you got that. Then you've got, corporate treasuries potentially putting 5 or 10% of their corporate treasury into Bitcoin. Then you've got the people who look at property, like my parents right now, right? Like looking at property law in the UK and the taxes that this so-called conservative government is trying to put into place. And they're just wondering what the hell's going on, right? So they're now looking at dumping their property portfolio because it just hasn't made sense.
Yep.
So, you look at that, like how many people are going to come out of traditional assets and get into Bitcoin, right? The property market around the world is $330 trillion. So depending on how all of this pans out, I think we're looking at $100 trillion Bitcoin market cap by early 2030s, which would put the price per Bitcoin at around $4.7 million a coin.
Will you take that, people in the chat? Just a bit. I mean, do you know something? I don't think, I'm extremely bullish. I may not be able to convey it like you, but I'm so bullish it keeps me awake at night. The thought of being in this early to this asset and what this asset can do for the future. And I'm with you, generational wealth. I'm doing this. My biggest issue is generational wealth. For me, is taken care of with our kids and grandkids and great grandkids. My fear is, how do we pass the baton? There's a lot there's a lot to be built out yet to make it easier to pass that generational wealth down. But I just don't think any of us have got a real clue about how face ripping and melting this thing will be come the end of this decade. And I always say, we went and lived in the Canary Islands. We came back from the Canary Islands in 2017. I can't believe that's 6 years since we came back, and we'll go again. We'll be off to Portugal at some point. But 6 years have passed, and another 6 years will pass, and we'll be at 2029, and I'll be 70. Oh my God, what's that about? The point is, it's going to come round really, really quickly. And we're back to where we started the show. I'm imploring anyone and everyone, if you have some means or some method of getting to 1 Bitcoin, do it now, because that window is closing so rapidly. I can see the damn thing shutting. So I just don't think anybody really gets what this is going to do for humanity and money in general across 8 billion people.
Yeah, I mean, even if the only problem that it solves is store of value, it has fixed the number one problem that every single person is touched with in the world. This is another reason why I don't crap coin, right?
Yep.
Because if I think about what I want to put my money into as an investor, the first question that you have to ask yourself is, what problem does it solve? So if I want to put my money into Tesla, I need to analyze what problem Tesla is solving and whether there's value in solving that problem, right? Same thing with Bitcoin. I understand what is the problem Bitcoin is solving. Same thing with any of these crap coins. What is the problem that these crap coins are solving? What you realize very quickly when you start using half a brain and doing some analysis is that Bitcoin has actually solved the problem.
Yeah.
Whereas all of these crap coins, what they're doing is giving you a piece of paper that's been written by a couple nerds telling you we're going to hopefully one day solve this problem, but we need your capital right now. We can't get this registered as a security because it's a complete scam. So I'm launching it as a token because I want to violate the securities laws and not present a proper investment the way it's meant to be presented. And I want to take advantage of the Wild West markets that are out there, and I want you to put your money, your hard-earned money, into them. To me, it's like I want to put my hard-earned money into something that has solved the problem, right? Like Tesla didn't go public until it had actually solved the problem, right? They'd already built a car by then, and then they needed to go public to scale it. So that's what I want to aim for. That's what I want to focus on, which is why I don't think about crap coins. I don't think about anything else. The single biggest problem in the world is every single person in the world getting subjugated by the fact that the money that they earn, the spiritual energy that they convert into currency through their physical labor, gets devalued by the fiat financial system that we've lived in under subjugation for 230 years. That's what Bitcoin solves.
Well, amen, I could say. So, do you think we're at the then they fight you stage? Are we coming out of the then they fight you stage? Where are we at with all of that? I mean, I've gone through the ESG narrative and, you know, all of it. I've watched Jamie Dimon 1 minute calling it a fraud, the next minute saying, you know, he'll terminate anyone's employment that buys it. And his daughter pops up and says, I've got Bitcoin, Dad. And, you know, we've seen Larry Fink and all the rest of them. Is there more to come?
How can we be in the then they'll fight you stage when Larry Fink is talking about Bitcoin being a flight to quality every chance he gets on?
So you're saying we're coming out of it?
We're out of it. It's not even we're coming out of it. It's done. They filed for an ETF. They filed for an ETF. Like, what are we talking about? It's done. Larry Fink has been bent over by Bitcoin and it's finished. The fighting is done. That was the last cycle. This cycle, what you're going to see is adoption. This is what I'm saying. The demand shock is, and I understand people have PTSD with how much how much these institutions have been fighting Bitcoin, but it's done. They filed for an ETF. The most powerful man in finance is on TV calling Bitcoin a flight to quality. Come on, like what are we talking about? It's done.
Listen, I just want bullishness, and I got it. Look, seriously, if this doesn't get 20 million views with two bullish people like this on it, I don't know what will. But seriously, thank you for coming on. I've had an absolute blast. I hope you have as well. You audience members, I always go in and chat with my audience, but this just hasn't been possible with that chat. But for those of British HODL's supporters that have come over to check this out, please follow me. Give me a little bit of a love as well, people, because I've been doing this for 5.5 years. I'm not monetizing it. I'm just doing it to share the Bitcoin message so we can stop regular people going down the poop coin, crap coin route. That's all I'm trying to do. So the more eyeballs get on it, the better. And as you said, British HODL, we need more people. We need more people talking about Bitcoin in a positive light because I believe anyway, let's call them podcasters, whatever it is, have got their place and they've got their audience. And many people will be turned off by me, but not by you, and vice versa. And we've all got to try and find our audience. Now, in the show notes, as soon as it's finished, I'm going to put your Twitter link and I'm going to put the link to your YouTube channel. Anything else you want to shout out to the audience before you go?
The first thing I want to say is everyone who's watching this should subscribe to the UK Bitcoin Master channel. And I always say this, it's not about me, it's about the message.
Yeah,
so
agreed.
Every person who likes Bitcoin should be subscribing to every Bitcoiner's YouTube channel. Simple as that. Because the more you subscribe, the more Bitcoin channels you subscribe to, the better the message gets hit on the algorithm and it starts pushing the Bitcoin videos out there to people. It's absolutely essential to do that. And, listen, I'm glad that you're a Brit. What can I say? I think that's also cool as well. We need to get more of us out here talking about Bitcoin.
So do I. I
UK.
love it when Brits are about. I do. You know, it's all US, 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 and there's nothing wrong with that. I understand. You know, biggest capital markets on planet Earth. I get that. But you know, I always say that the Brits are a skeptical bunch, but once we get our teeth into something, we've got that British bulldog mentality, and we don't let go.
I don't care what anyone says, right? The the Brits, we took over half of the entire damn world from an island. So America can talk about all it wants to, and they basically, I love America, by the way. I just want to point that out. America can talk about all it wants to, but it went and got situated in a place which is hard to invade, which is number one. We did it from an island that you could invade from any direction. Any direction you could have invaded the UK, still took over half the world. So, and the UK financial system is still pretty powerful from an empirical perspective. So yes, I'm a proud Brit, and I think we need to get more British people into Bitcoin. I'm devastated with what's going on in the UK as far as politics go and everything else, which is why I choose not to live in the UK. But I would happily return back to the UK if the politics and everything else straightened out again, and we got back to putting up British flags instead of other flags.
Oh, don't start me on that, because I don't want, there's going to be different people with different views, but I've got my own views. Did you hear earlier today on Twitter? I know you're 6 hours behind me, I think.
Yeah.
There was somebody tweeted, I think it was Bitcoin Magazine that, no, I don't think it was, but the UK are going to now pass a law, or they're pushing a bill through to make it so that you've got to take an exam before you can buy Bitcoin. You heard that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's I didn't hear that, but it doesn't surprise me, right? I need to go look at that. But it wouldn't surprise me. Listen, at the end of the day, the biggest choke point is that the reason why governments want people to invest in property, and one of the things that surprises me about the UK is we don't have a 30-year mortgage like the US does.
Yep.
We don't have, we don't have a 1031 exchange system like the US does to incentivize people to stay in property. Otherwise, property prices would be a lot higher in the UK. But the reason why governments love property is because it locks the capital within the borders of the country. And they can't do that with Bitcoin unless it is an exchange traded product like an ETF, right? Which is why they will have these choke point moments where they will try and lock off your access to Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But the only way they'll give you access is through these speculative products, which is within the control of the country itself, and the capital is within the control of the country. So not only is time running out for price, time is also running out for access. So depending on how smart you are and how freedom-minded you are, like I have some Bitcoin that is completely untouchable. I also have some Bitcoin in GBTC, right? So I have a balance of exposures across all different planes, and that's what it's about. Again, time for access is running out, and time for price is running out too. So I don't know what to say. Like I know I won't be around in 8 years. I just know that. There won't be any value in me saying anything.
I pretty well know it as well, because I want to go off and see the world with my lovely wife.
Exactly.
There's things you need to do. I don't want to lie on my deathbed saying, "No, I wish I'd have done more podcasts." No, I want more experiences. That's what it's about. British HODL has been an absolute blast, my friend. Thank you for coming on. I'm just going to go over to my desktop and show a quick quote. And I think this quote is quite relevant to this show. Will you stay in my green room? I'd love to have a quick 30-second chat before we go, or have you got to run?
No, I'll stay. My honor. Thank you for having me on. And again, anything I can do to help, just let me know. And I think you're doing an amazing job. And again, everyone who's watching this, you better subscribe to the UK Bitcoin Master channel, because if you don't, you're just a traitor.
Yes, agreed. And the same, my audience isn't as big as yours, but I keep plugging you and what you're talking about and your channel on all of my shows. So the subscribers that I have got, please subscribe to British HODL as well. Let's build more of a British culture around Bitcoin, and let's make people take notice of us. That's what I'm up for, and that's why I keep doing what I'm doing. Look, stay there. I'm just going to go over to my desktop for one